Hello, welcome.
Oh,
I'm Philip White. This is,
Warren Hammonds.
and we are
Nice to be
members.
here.
Nice to be here. Welcome you to White Feather Counsel of Men. we we're at that point. We're at that point in the year where this is our final session of 2023, and it's been a long year, and we have shared this journey together, and we have learned a lot about each other, and we want to be reflective today in regard to some topic we want to cover in reference to that. Um, it's been so much that we have found to be very beneficial for both of us. And several years ago, I came up with this term just from reflection on my own journey in life that I don't meet anyone by accident. Everyone that enters my life, I feel has a purpose, and Warren Hammond definitely has met a purpose in my life. His total personality, his willingness to share, his transparency, his spirituality, all of the positive ingredients that I personally think all men need to have. And when he entered my life, I could see it right from the start. And we have built a kind of personal relationship that we look forward to talking to each other and being in each other's company. That we come together to do these, and we put our heads together to think about subjects that we think will be impactful and useful to all men. And it's just been a wonderful experience. And he kind of validates what I think men should be about. They have the sensitivity, they have the emotional health, and to have the ability to share his grief and to share his moments of comfort and his moments of concerns about about family, about this country. And it gives me that sense of grounding in reference to the historian John Meacham, when he talks about the one thing that has helped this very young country together is those individuals that you're not going to see on the news. They don't make a lot of noise. They're not out there trying to bring attention to themselves, and they're just going about being their lives or being good people that he titles better angels. And I've mentioned that to Warren many times in regard to he, in my opinion, is one of those better angels in this country that helps give it a sense of that desire that you heard politicians talking about trying to have a perfect union. Well, he's one of those individuals that can help make that happen. So I've been so personally blessed to be in his space, to know his family. We didn't know when we met that we only live just less than a mile from each other in an area here in Central Virginia called Chesterfield County. And so, yeah, he has met my wife. I met his wife, and it's just been a beautiful relationship. And we look forward to continuing to go on as we go into next year. We this is our final session here. We we do hope to continue to have the podcast in some form or fashion. We just got to figure it out as we go into next year. We'll let everybody know as soon as we have some plans as to using this podcast or maybe doing some Zoom as well. But all of those plans will be put in place, and we definitely will be in touch with you at this as time allows. And we want to unpack what I just talked about how this relationship has been so beneficial to us, and what I have learned from him as a man, particularly as a white man, and what he has learned from me as a black man, and how we think that is a perfect model for all men, white men and black men. If you if the men in your circle, in your personal circle, professional circle, social circle, spiritual circle, if they all look like you have to ask yourself, why is that? And how are you growing if the only people that you are around are people that look like you? And that each of us, if we can come together, this is a model that we would like all men to use. That for black men to intentionally go out and form a relationship like this, that Warren and I have, and white men to do the same. Because if we can bring white men and black men together, our history is entangled. It is entangled. It's been entangled for over 400 years. And we can untangle it in a healthy way, in a solid way that we all can grow. And if we can grow as men in America, then this country would be a much better place. It would be a safer place. Just today, we've had another man in Las Vegas, at the University of Las Vegas, to go over there and shot several students. For what? You know, just a few days ago, a man in New York killed family members, set the house on fire, and killed some children and other adults in the family. For what? You know, and we see this time and time again with men getting to a place of isolation and frustration and their socialization and all of these limitations they have in their lives, and the only thing they can choose to do is a result of violence. And the question that we have to start asking ourselves as a country, what is it about men, boys and men, that keep resorting to this type of behavior? You know, and we go back a few years, and Warren and I had mentioned this on a podcast, probably back Congresswoman Frederica Wilson out of Florida got passed in Congress this commission on the studies of black men and boys. My opinion is that we need a commission on the status of men in general, because something is terribly wrong with how we continue to lead the pack in America when it comes to violence. And that's by no mistake. There are some social components in our lives and our training, what we call that man box, that all of us seem to get into, and once we in that box, we don't know how to get out as a healthy person. So we got some work to do, and that's our challenge in reference to men in general, is that we step out that man box, that we build relationships with other men that don't look like you, and take that step forward. And I guarantee you that you would be more rewarded than you ever thought you could. Warren?
Well, thanks, Phil, for all of that introduction. And you hit on several things. I don't know where this is going in the end, but I do want to start with maybe unpacking it a little bit about what we brought together. And how that conversation started, and how you began this session, and then maybe go to that current event, or if unpacking it a bit. But you know, we have come to this table. We have come to these conversations hoping that it would be a model, hoping that it would be an example of something that would have legs and arms out there in the community for people to try themselves to develop a relationship with someone different than yourself. Develop a relationship with someone new that you can have a good in-depth conversation with. And, you know, you've brought your emotion, you've brought your history and your experience. I've really appreciated, of course, your expertise and insight related to boys and men. I don't bring that as much to the conversation, but you've always made that part of our discussion, and I think that's important. And what that has done to me is sensitize me to that part of the world of specifically focused on men and the relationship that boys might have with their fathers, and how boys grow into men. You've helped sensitize me to that thing that's called the man box, and I've realized that before, but I've never called it that. We stereotype a lot of people, and we put people in boxes. So you've helped teach me to take seriously that kind of conversation, and made important our work directly related to maybe the men conversation. And you've expressed it here in this current event. I do want to say a few other things that I've really been impressed with and been moved by, and been meaningful to me within our relationship, because I think there's several key words that are important to me in healthy relationships: honesty, transparency, respect, and listening. And I have felt each of those things as we have related together. I have felt each of those things from you, and I have felt freedom to express those things with me. So it's been a really great give and take. And we probably don't model the perfect relationship and the perfect model, but it's a dadgum good model.
Yeah.
And those kinds of words that can express a relationship that just began 2 years ago is very important. And I would encourage people to seek those kinds of key word, not just words, those key dynamics that are important in healthy relationships. So I have always felt respected. We've differed on some things, but I've always felt listened to. And those are very helpful aspects as people learn to talk together and grow together. And you know, I want the best for any of our listeners. I want the best for our world. I want the best for this nation. And I do think it might take the germination of one-on-one relationships, building to group relationships, and then extending to how that happens. Those are a few things that have impacted me and our work together. There are a few more things, but I'll turn it back over to you because you know I want us to have a conversation.
Yeah, it's like when Warren and I was thinking about how to unpack this final session for 2023. And I had sent him a text message about how we could share our collective experiences of getting to know each other. There's this term that's been around a while called "each one teach one," and my wife shared that with me because I shared with her what I had told Warren about each teach, and I came up with that little slogan. And she said, "Well, there's this thing I did about each one teach one." So if you look at either one of those, each teach, and I was saying that is a catchy little term that could be a slogan of what Warren and I are trying to say about men, that you can each teach someone else who doesn't look like you, but you got to initiate that contact in a very sincere, transparent, nurturing way, and be focused on the fact that you want to get to know that person. You see, not just as a work colleague or a church member or your golf buddy or all of that, your football guy that you go to football games with. Because a lot of men could have a social circle of men that they hang with and do things with, but they still may not really know each other. They may not know the depth of their personality. You see, so we can do a lot of stuff together. You can have your huddles and go to games and all of that kind of stuff, but do you really, really know each other as a person? Do you know what they really, what are some of their biggest fears in life? You know, what kinds of things that really kind of bring them down to their knees? Because we all could have moments like that in our life. We're not going to always be on top. We're not going to always be happy and full of energy and things like that. So when we have those moments in our life, we don't need to isolate ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and there needs to be a level of trust.
Yes.
That is that's obvious, that's definite, and that you both feel, because if you are expressing those things, you need to feel the freedom, and you need to feel that you're in a respected circle of being able to share that emotion or to share those experiences that I may not have wanted to have shared with other people. So there needs to be a deep level of trust, and that needs to be built. That didn't come automatically, but it does sort of take a practice of being vulnerable, of sharing some emotion, of sharing some of that. You know, one of the things that I think is interesting about our relationship is we've never shied away of sharing our differences. You know, we have a lot of differences from our experiences. You've shared how you felt things growing up, and because I wasn't in that same world that you lived in, I was in my white cocooned world. I experienced something different, and we've shared that, and we've owned some of those differences. You know, but what's interesting is, you know, we've let our differences sort of bring us together. So differences don't have to separate us. Differences don't have to divide us. Differences can be discussed so that can bring us together. And I think that's what we've tried to model.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've both celebrated our differences, but we have also celebrated the commonalities that we do bring, because we bring some of the same fears. We bring some of the same disappointments about what's happening in the world and with racial issues or with issues of men.
Right.
So we bring some of those same concerns and fears. We've expressed some of our differences. I'm guilty. I feel guilty about life in a lot of different ways than you don't feel, because you didn't come from the white world that oppressed so many people before, but you bring other things. You bring a pain that I don't feel. So we've learned from each other's differences, but we've let those differences bridge us together, and I think that's important.
Absolutely true, and that's where I think each of us have to begin is to recognize that you may know stuff, you may have a certain philosophy of life based on your genetic makeup, or your color of your skin and the neighborhood you live in, and all of those factors, those social factors. But that doesn't necessarily identify who you are, deep down in your soul as a person. And having that desire to build relationships from a position of being authentic about who you are, and be courageous enough to share how you feel about a multitude of subjects. And that's where I think we got to get over that fear factor.
Those are great words, authentic and courageous.
Yeah. We got to get over that fear factor of being able to relate to each other, because once we can kick open that door and get fear out of our lives as men, and be able to share from a sense of just, let's use this term we hear a lot around men, brotherhood, in a real way, I guarantee you we will begin to see some significant changes in this country if we can start to come together as men. It was Chris Como years ago when he was still on CNN. And the subject matter was domestic violence. I think it was Domestic Violence Month. And that brother said this. He said, America would never end this whole trauma of domestic violence until men are on the front line. He said that. That's what Chris Como said. And it hit me right right in that space, because I've been doing research and study and working with men for over 20 years, and know that he was absolutely correct. And that's just one of the social challenges we have when we talk about domestic violence. Because when you hear the term domestic violence, you automatically think about some man being aggressive to some woman or children. That's pretty much the prototype when we talk about the term domestic violence, and we just have to own that as men. So the question is, men, how can we get out front to be able to help men that find themselves being that type of person that fits the profile as someone who would be abusive to his family members? How do we help that brother turn away from that? You see? So a lot of men, we hide behind that shield when we talk about something as personal as that. Most men know men who fit that type of person. But we are afraid to say something to them because we don't want to be emotionally attacked ourselves. That term that keeps men separate is, that's my household. Stay out of my business. And we walk away. And then if something terribly happened to that brother, he killed himself or he killed his family, then we're in shock. But we knew there was a problem. But we didn't know how to, and I learned this term from a police officer, actually Captain Carol Adams here in Richmond, Virginia. She said this term to me once. We were talking about men. And she was talking about her training as a police officer, that they were trained to have what is called as compassionate confrontation. You can be compassionate, but it's still a confrontation because you're addressing something that may cause someone to be somewhat uncomfortable, but they know you care about them. See, and that goes back to what you said, that trust.
And that's how we learn and trust more.
Right. If you you feel comfortable to talk to someone from a sense of trust and that you really, really care about them, you probably won't get the resistance. And what she shared with me is that when you can get men to be open to know that you care about them, then they may go from being enraged to a sense of the ability to maybe cry on your shoulder. See, and that's the challenge, guys, that we got to get beyond that uncomfortable space and be able to know that we may have men in our circle, in our personal circle, who may be having some issues with relationship, maybe having some issues with their ability to express themselves, maybe drinking too much, maybe doing a lot of things that is not healthy. But we got to have, if we care about them, if you call them my boy, that's my posse, we ride and die, we do all of that, all those cute little terms. But if you care about them, if you really, really care about them, and you know that they have some limitations, socially, spiritually, emotionally, relationship-wise, why can't we just have a sit-down talk about that,
Yeah, some places where our comfortability dissolves and, when we're not comfortable, we just shut down. And we haven't done that. We've tried not to do that here. That's a big step.
Yeah.
I think one small step maybe that I've learned with our relationship, I think I have learned to ask more questions so that I can learn.
Yeah.
I've assumed that you have been hurt by the white society that you grew up in. I've assumed that you had a different childhood than I. And in a way, I'm right to assume that, but I'm not right to assume the degree of that. Yeah. I'm not right to assume. So why not ask? So I become a little more comfortable of asking. I'll share a personal thing from one of the podcasts. I just was going through some of our material, and I pulled out this picture of, I don't know if it can be seen now, of the Gordon. And I remember we did a podcast about this. I've assumed that when you see this picture, you would be upset and enraged and angry, like I am.
Right.
I am when I see this picture. I'm upset. I feel guilty from a white perspective, but I'm angry that this happened. Right. And when I asked you, Phil, what did you feel? Your first thing was much more positive. You said, wow, I see a survivor here. Yeah. You saw someone who has survived. I saw someone who was practically beaten to death by the white folks. Now, both of those are true, because that's what we're feeling. Right. But I asked. I finally asked. I assumed one thing, and I was wrong.
Right.
So I do think that I have learned that a better discussion is built around questions and built around asking instead of just assuming, not to take for granted. Right. Yes, because you are a black man, that you are obviously angry at something like this. And so that has helped me. And that's one of the specific experiences that has retaught me to ask and to engage a conversation instead of just assuming some.
And that's a perfect example, people to look at, because most folks, when they see this photo of he was known as Peter or Gordon. So I just took both names and put them together, and I called him Peter Gordon. And if we see, Americans have gotten to a point of being somewhat, we get so much, we are bombarded with so much social media stuff coming from multitudes of places that we don't necessarily do research ourselves. we don't read enough. We don't study enough on ourselves. So we kind of take stuff that's coming with us in these 10-second bites on news, this or channel that, or media, social media stuff, rather than do your own research. And I was so direct when Warren showed me this picture, and I said, "Yeah, I got this same picture myself." So, because Warren had it, and he shared it, I said, I've had it for a while, and knowing his story, his full story, and when we did our podcast on it, you can see it on YouTube on the White Feather Counsel of Men. We went in depth into his life, and that picture was when he had escaped from slavery and was in the Union camp to enroll in the colored troops, and became an officer. See, that was his whole story. He would always have those wounds, those scar tissues on his back, but that was not his story. And when Warren and I talked about that, there's so many examples of how people can assume things about someone, or you may know a little bit about their story, but you have not taken the opportunity to sit down with them and learn more. Yeah. You see, it was like Warren and I one time were talking about our sons. He has a son, I have a son. And I was sharing with Warren that my son he lives in Norfolk, the Norfolk, Virginia, Tidewater area, and he's actually in graduate school there. He went to Norfolk State University, and he's doing some graduate study there. And when he would come here, he would always stay, and his mother and I would always try to encourage him to leave during the daylight time. But he just loved driving at night. So we would say, well, be careful and call us when you get home. And when he would leave the house, I would kind of watch the car pull off and turn the corner, and then it's out of sight. And I'm always thinking, I hope he can get home safe and don't have any interactions with police officers. Don't get stopped. Because if you get stopped, we trained him, particularly him, our boys. What I told Warren about the talk.
Yeah. I thought you meant the sex talk, but you meant the police talk.
The police talk, and how so many black families know. All of you know what I mean when I say the talk. But
I had no clue.
I had no clue when we talk about the talk. And that's just one of the realities that we have to do. If you walk in these shoes as an African American male or female, you know about the talk, and it's just one of those survival things that we had to learn. So and Warren was so he said, well, I never had to have that kind of talk with my son, and I'm going like, no, I guess you don't. No. You know? And that's just one of the differences.
That's just one of the differences, but that's one of the things that binds us as well. Just that the difference ends up binding us because we realize how different it is and how we have to acknowledge that. So, I know we're about to wrap up, but I think we're here to encourage people to look outside your circle of who you are and find somebody like each other, like we have. Someone different than yourself, someone that doesn't look like you, to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to walk forward with that, and, to fess up a little bit. I think part of this is, fess up to what hurts. Right. Be real about that. Fess up to the barriers that divide us that also might seem very difficult to overcome because that's what can break them down. That's what can begin to break down those barriers that might separate us. So I still feel like we're on the start of our relationship. And it's still exciting and but those are the things that I've wanted to express about us being together in this, doing this work together, and what I think is important to others as we seek maybe to change the world in one relationship at a time, if that's what it takes.
That's right. And that was the whole concept when we started this 2 years ago. We titled it White Feather Counsel of Men. We're talking about all men. And for us to be a collective group as men, when we talk about leadership and as it relates to men, this is what we're talking about. That we take our leadership courage, we take our leadership we take our leadership positions that we have, and make it a purposely goal to engage men that don't look like you. That if we could come together as a group and be able to, as a collective group, be able to help our healing in regard to some of the social training that we have learned since we were boys that we no longer need to have. I mean, there's a lot of them. And do your own research about that world of boys and men. You will find out very early in your research that we are not as capable to reach the goal of being a complete, nonviolent, healthy, emotional, strong adult that we could be because of our social training and how each of us takes steps to step out of that man box and to develop the social skills to do what Warren and I are doing, to share our concerns, to be transparent, to even be spiritual. I'm not talking about
religious.
I'm not talking about. I'm just being a spiritual creature.
Yeah.
You know, how you embrace nature, how you really communicate with your inner self. You see, and be able and be comfortable to share that in a way that would draw people to you because they see something in you that they feel they like. And that's the goal. That's the goal here, because until we can do that, guys, as men, white men, black men in America, we will always be at that teetering moment of total collapse, you know, and look at where we are now. This is about to come out of 2023, and people got a lot of concerns about just the whole fabric of this country, just based on where we are politically. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a good place for us to start as to how did we get to this place where we are right now. We've been there before. Our history is filled of all kinds of rebellious acts, primarily by men, but somehow we would get to a point of stability and continue to rise as a country. There's always a group that's going to try to push us back to the good old days, whatever that means. But we continue to go forward. And we can do so much better if we can begin to put significant attention on the social and spiritual development of boys and men. So that's our challenge for you as we're about to enter 2024. Mm-hmm. And we definitely be out there on the front line ourselves, coming up with ways to help keeping this conversation going. And we look forward to you joining us. We will, like I say, we'll be back. We're not going anywhere. We may do some Zoom. We definitely look forward to continuing to work with this studio that we've been with for the past 2 years, Quandram's podcast studio here in Henrico County, Virginia. Our chief engineer has been Chris Johnson, and he's one of the people that has helped train us and teach us about this whole technology podcast, and we enjoy that. And his the CEO of this company, Arthur Johnson, has allowed us to come into the studio and have the facility to do this work here. So we appreciate Quandram being able to allow us to learn and grow on this podcast with them, and we appreciate everything. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach us on our email, which is WF just the letters WF Counsel of Men at gmail.com. So please keep in touch with us. And say we have a load of material that's on the podcast. Please go and check it out. We probably got over, probably about 25.
I don't know how many now.
We got a lot of
20 or so sessions.
20 or so sessions there on the podcast, but all kinds of subjects. So just go to Counsel of Men on YouTube, and you'll find us there, and check out some of the sessions we have. And we look forward to
whatever next year holds.
Whatever next year holds. We'll be there.
We appreciate any listeners. We appreciate each other. And
that's right.
Thanks for what you bring and your ending challenge and insights that you shared. and especially thanks to the work of this crew here.
That's right.
And, you know, regardless of what's next, we're still out there on that YouTube channel that
That's
you
right.
mentioned, and be connected by the email. And hope you'll use it if you need to, and let us know if you're interested in knowing more about what we might do into 2024.
That's right. So we thank you for joining us this evening, and have a safe holiday, and we hope to see you in 2024. Good night.
Have a great evening. Good night.
Bye-bye.